welcome to another edition of Girls Talk 9.0, where we candidly talk about the horror film movie pick of the week and occasionally the topic du jour. Today, we're going to talk about the 2024 horror film Nosferatu, directed by Robert Eggers. My name is Wade Hollow. With me, the notorious note taker, Nanya, and the sensational Sunchild. Ladies, what have you been up to lately? Anything fun?
Oh,
Anything interesting?
waiting for the warm weather for sure.
It's getting better. It's definitely getting better.
Warm enough out there for me where I live.
Yeah,
It's been beautiful. It's been a beautiful spring. So lots of outdoor activity, which is good.
for
No,
sure. For
it's
sure. It's getting warmer, in New England, right? I mean, 50s. That's good.
it was 47 yesterday.
Yeah.
It
What
was like,
is it? Well, I mean, it's still March. You know what I mean? We all know that it snowed in April, so it's not like but still it's better than,
I thought about Prince when you said that.
ah,
His songs sometimes.
may you rest in peace.
Yeah, amen.
All right. All right. So like I said, this is 2024 film Nosferatu. So Sunchild, what is this film all about?
Vampires. It's definitely about vampires. So let me see if I can try to summarize it. I'm going to summarize it from Wikipedia. But this young girl, Ellen, is lonely as a child, and she dreams of a companion, and she summons more or less this. I want to call him an ogre so badly, but he's not an ogre. He's a vampire. She summons this dark spirit to her, and he awakens this dark spirit, and he comes to her in her dreams, and he wants to possess her. So cut to 38 years later, she's married, and it doesn't say if she's had these continuous dreams in that time frame, but anyhow, she marries Thomas Hutter, and he's sent to Transylvania by his employer to meet her Count Orlok, who we later discover Count Orlok is a vampire. This description is very long, so he's summoned away from his new bride, and he leaves his new bride with his wealthy friend and his wife and their two children. And
Emmeline and Thomas.
right, Emily and Thomas.
Yeah.
Sorry, he leaves her with them, and he goes to Orlok to sell him this decrepit building that is, across from his new wife's home. A lot of things happen to him while he's there in Transylvania, which we're going to break down and talk about. But meanwhile, his bride is back home, and these dreams start to come to her again of this dark creature vampire.
Okay.
So we're going to get into it. But
Yeah.
that's my brief summary, because
Yeah.
it's like a 2-hour movie, and because it is based in like 1800s, it doesn't move quickly. So my summary could go on for as long as this.
That's okay. We can each give a quick overview and then we can kind of take it however you want to take it.
Okay, so while Thomas is with Orlok, he experiences a lot of creepy things, and he seems to like lose time. He is in this hotel or inn, which didn't want to let him stay there. Like the whole town seems to be shunning him because he's going to visit Orlok. And while he's in this hotel, he finds a book on vampires, and for some reason, he's intrigued and compelled to keep this book. So he's there with him.
Well, before you go too deep, did you like it, or like let's just get our initial thoughts on.
I really did like it better in the theater than I did.
Oh, okay.
I think for me, it was one of those movies that was better to see in theater, just because it's it's 1800s. It's very dark, so watching it on a big screen, it seems to brighten it up a little bit more for me, so that you can see exactly like every detail of what is happening. There's a lot of shadows, there's a lot of things happening that I couldn't really. It didn't scare me as much at home on the TV as it did in the theater, but I liked it.
Yeah, I think for me it was so. It was a good movie. Don't get me wrong, and it's a good movie because But nothing's as good as the book, the original Bram and Stoker, right, Dracula. Nothing as good as that. But I think it was, they did a pretty good take on it. I guess this is the third one because the first one came out in 1922, and there was one in 79, and of course this one in 2004. So I think, for me, I it was good. It was way too long. I will say I slept on a lot of it and I fast forwarded a lot of it. Um, but I thought it was a good movie. I think there was some really good cinematography, in particular where Thomas is traveling to the Count's castle and he's going over the bridge or something, and you can see like a face in the mountains. I thought that was really creative. And I also thought when he actually gets to, I guess, the I don't know, the edge of the castle, and his welcoming coach or whatever comes out. When the horse is coming, it almost sounds like heartbeat, and it
Yeah,
gets louder and louder. So it's almost like pulling you into like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And then it actually turns into hooves. I thought that was really creative. So there's definitely some very creative things happening in the film. But
definitely.
I'm not a big vampire movie, but like I said, I really loved the book. So the movie was good. What do you think, Nanya?
How about you, Nanya?
Um, I liked it. I thought it was in terms of filmmaking, I honestly thought it was probably one of the most spectacular films I've seen. It was absolutely beautiful to look at. I, like you, thought the cinematography was amazing, the set design, the costumes, the soundtracks, the sound editing, the acting, the casting, the directing. In terms of it being a film, I just thought it was just absolutely beautiful. It was really just to me a good example of beautiful filmmaking. Um, Having said that, even though there's so many positives, there were just a couple things that I thought maybe didn't make me, love it as much as I wanted to. One movie that you missed, or I don't know if you intentionally missed it, or sorry, if you intentionally omitted it, but the 1992 film Dracula, which is the same as Nosferatu, right? It's just the same movie. That one has something that this one didn't have, and maybe we'll get into that as we go on. That was the one with Gary Oldman as Dracula, and Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder. That one, follows this to the T. I mean, it's the exact same story as the original book, but it had more scares. This one was absolutely beautiful filmmaking, but it wasn't scary to me in the least. And that's okay because I've seen the 1922 version of Nosferatu, and that one wasn't scary to me either. So I'm okay with that. But I was hoping for maybe more of the 1992 type scares. And then the other thing that I didn't love about the film was I just felt like it was a little bit heavy on the underlying theme that runs through all of these kind of, not all of these, but many of these myths about the sullied woman type of thing. I didn't love that part to death, but overall, I just really thought it was an absolutely beautiful film. I couldn't. There was that one scene where Thomas gets up to the castle after having walked for so long because his previous driver wouldn't take him further, or his ride, couldn't get him up there. And then the carriage appears out of nowhere. An empty carriage pulls up, and the door to the carriage slowly opens. That was just absolutely beautiful. I mean, I'm like, that was art. So there was just so many beautiful, things in the film. So I did enjoy it overall, but like I said, it was a couple things that I'll get into that I didn't love about it.
Yeah, before we break it down, I just want to say, so I read this article, a little bit of history. So obviously the Bram Stoker book came out in 1800s, like the late 1800s. In 1922, the person who directed that film wanted to do it based on the book, but he got sued, and so he changed the names and he changed some things about it. And because of copyright infringement, he shut it down and he moved to another country and released it in another country, which is why I think some of the because I kept saying this is a German film. Why does no one has a German accent? They moved it to a different country and released a German version, all in German, and an English version. And then in 1979, so much time has passed that they could actually make it very similar to the original book. So in 79, they kind of went back to the original names and characters that were in actually the book. But they added something new in this thing about that's where the name changed, or they never called him Orlok. It was just Dracula, right, until 2022. But then they also changed the fact that he could that
No,
something
22
about
was the, I'm sorry, go ahead. Never mind. Go ahead.
something about the sun. That was new. That didn't happen in 2022. He could come out in the daylight, although he preferred to be in the dark. So in 79, they introduced this whole thing about the sun, like being afraid of going out in the daylight. And then, I didn't see the 92 one, but they didn't really compare that one, probably because it's not, I don't know, maybe it wasn't, I don't know why, but they didn't talk about that one. So it's interesting in 2024, it's even a little more different. I agree with you. Nanya, they introduced some things that I really don't care for, particularly, and I didn't know that I thought the vampires' lust was for blood. I didn't realize it was for other things, and they put a lot of other things in this one. So I guess for me,
Well, to your point, if we're going to go down through the history, because I probably read the same exact Wikipedia article you read,
it
but
wasn't
what they,
Wikipedia, but
okay, but I think I may have read something very similar.
mhm.
Um, yeah, they have switched up a little bit over the course of these movies in terms of what, they emphasize, what they don't emphasize, and how they sort of portray this vampire, right? And so they talk about in this one how the so there's the German version and there's the Romanian version, right? The German version, one portrays the vampire as more seductive and more human looking. So he presents himself as just a normal looking human, and then you just know something's weird about him, right? And that's what we're used to seeing in almost every vampire movie. They don't show up and you think that's a vampire. They're usually overly handsome, overly charming, overly charismatic.
Yeah.
Wealthy.
Yes, this harkens back to the original, which is he is not handsome, he is not charismatic, he doesn't look alive, he looks dead, he looks reanimated, he looks like a corpse. And so there's a lot of things they switched. The original one, biting another person wouldn't make that person a vampire. Like that's changed, right? So or this in Orlok, biting another person doesn't make other vampires. He is the only vampire. And so other things that we've used to seeing, the vampire bites somebody and makes another vampire.
Right.
I was because I'm a digger too, so I was digging into some of the because I wanted to understand just the folklore behind it all. And we can and listen, Sunchild, if we're interrupting your flow, tell us to shut up and we'll get to
Yeah,
it.
no,
Exactly.
very interested in all of this. So please go on.
So because I was trying to understand what is his motivation, like what is this about, the same thing I always want to know when we're watching all these demonic movies, like what the hell does the devil want, because he seems to be petty and wasting time chasing after one person in a cellar. What's the big plan here? But what I was reading, and I actually wrote it down because I know I wouldn't remember it, is that so the original, even before Bram Stoker made the book, there was obviously myths about this in
Yes.
Austria-Hungary for centuries. And the Hungarian Romanian myth was that this incubus, or this undead, which is what I think Nosferatu actually means, would the myth was that he would drink the blood of old people, that he sought sexual intercourse, I guess, with young people, especially newlyweds. They blamed him for illegitimate children. He was blamed for impotency and infertility. So then that makes more sense, because then I was thinking to myself, I could see a situation where somebody was getting ready to get married and they found out the person wasn't a virgin, which used to matter in those days. And then you'd have to make up some big fantasy about some, vampire coming and having taken your virginity. Or if a woman showed up pregnant out of wedlock, it was the vampire who did it.
Yeah.
Right. Or if the man couldn't have, was impotent and couldn't, not impotent, yeah, impotent or infertile and couldn't, produce a child, it was the vampire. So all of this, that makes now sense why this lust is part of the whole folklore, because that has always been part of it. It isn't that he's, he just wants the blood for no reason. Like I said, he's not making new vampires like in the previous ones. That is part of the whole folklore, the Austrian, back in the 15th century or 14th century, whenever they first started, telling the tales of this undead person. That was the story behind it.
That's really interesting because I
Isn't it? That made me feel a little bit more like, okay, maybe the movie makes a lot more sense to me now than it did prior to reading that. Because at first I was like, here we go again, another woman in a white nightgown.
Yeah,
Because every Exorcist movie, and it's always the devil always wants to take somebody's virginity or
yeah,
whatever. And I'm
yeah,
like, why? But in
yeah.
this context, it makes sense.
yeah, no, I mean, like I just don't see it as a movie to sit home and watch. Definitely not for me. But going to the theater, I was so focused on because it's not really scary, but it is
Yeah.
eerie. It is
Yeah. It's haunting.
haunting. Yeah, that's a good word. It has. I wouldn't call it like. I mean, I guess it's horror, but it wasn't very scary. It just had some haunting parts, some eerie parts, very dark, and the fact that you don't really see him, but you get a feel for exactly how hideous he is. It's that part, I guess, is scary, but the acting. I mean, can we just talk about William Defoe for a second? Can I just say how much I love him? I love
Me
him in
too. Isn't he so
oh,
cute?
he
Isn't
is
he
so
so cute?
adorable. I didn't realize he
So
was
adorable.
so small.
I didn't either. He's like a little pocket elf.
I just adore him. I think he is just so amazing in everything that he is in. Whether it's what was he in? Peter Parker, Spider-Man. He was in The Lighthouse,
Which you hated, but he was amazing in that.
a Robert Eggers thing, which I hated, but
I loved it.
he was amazing in that. He was, and thank you for remembering that. I did hate it. My friend also loved it because that's who I went to see it with. He loved it, but he like was the only reason I didn't get up and walk out. Like he just really brings life to the. I'm sorry, Alexa is just talking for no reason. He just brings so much to the characters that he plays.
I would say, all of them. I had never seen Lily Depp in anything before. She was unbelievable.
She was.
How that woman, the way she was portraying this, obviously the doctors couldn't tell if it was a psychological disorder, if it was actually something physical happening. She played that so well. I thought Nicholas Holt, who played Thomas, was amazing. And he's been in so many movies and he's good in everything, but he was superb in this. I thought even Anthony Taylor Johnson, who played Friedrich, he was amazing. Bill Skarsgård deserves an Oscar for playing that. I had no idea who the actor was. I had to Google it after the fact to see. It's the same guy who played It, the clown in It.
Really?
Yes, and he did that voice himself. So, because at first I was like, that sounds like maybe a voice modulator or something like that. But he summoned that voice. His background. He's like Swedish or something. He obviously doesn't speak anything like that. I thought he did a phenomenal job. Even though I did see it on TV, I felt like a good film. I don't know. I felt like I saw the beauty of it even on a smaller screen. And sometimes it depends on the quality of the screen and the settings and everything else. Because I thought that the makeup was phenomenal.
Right.
And I did have to switch it from, I did have to switch the mode to filmmaker mode to see it better on my TV. But the makeup was spectacular too. He looked like an 18th century Romanian count to me.
I think the acting carried it. The acting, the cinematography, the makeup. I mean, I wouldn't consider it horror. I don't think that it's a typical horror, but it's very haunting and excellent acting. Excellent. They did an excellent job.
I don't know how far you went down the rabbit hole, Whaley, but I was all the way down in the middle of it. And I actually read a review of the 1922 film, which one of the critics said it wasn't scary. So even back in 1922, they were like, this ain't scary enough.
Well, and
But
22
they
is also a
said,
silent film. So it's
Right.
kind of hard to, it was a silent film.
no, but there were other films that were scary that were also silent. But what the reason that the person said it wasn't scary to them was because they said that it was too brightly lit.
Mm.
And so it didn't leave enough to the imagination. And if you go back and look at the 1922 Nosferatu film, it is very brightly lit. I think he went the opposite end. So if you think about the famous scene in the original, like the fact that you know exactly what the guy in 1922 looks like, down
Right,
to
you
his
do.
eyebrows, to his
You do.
fingernails, him
Yeah.
standing, it was
Yeah.
brightly lit.
Yeah.
The fact that this was so dark that you almost couldn't make out sometimes, the movie had to go on for a minute to really see what the count looked like. I think that helped the film, keep that mystery and aura. And we've seen a lot of films that we agree are not necessarily scary that still fall under the horror genre. So I mean, it's a horrific tale. So it is horror in that sense. But yeah, I just didn't find it particularly scary. But that happens all the time for me.
I was hoping that the vampire would be typically like what we're used to. Very handsome, attractive, it was kind of like initially off-putting. He's like an ogre. I wanted to call him an ogre. I'm like, he doesn't even do like what vampires do. But I guess he's, the way they refer to him in Wikipedia as her summoning death. So he is, like you said, the undead. He's not what we're used to seeing. And I mean,
he's closer to the real
right
story.
Yeah.
What we're used to seeing is the Hollywood version,
Yeah.
of Clark Gable as the
Yeah.
vampire.
And I think if he were handsome, it wouldn't be so repulsive when he was with
right.
a woman. And
Of
you
course.
needed to have that.
As the movie went
Yeah.
on, I came to appreciate the fact that he didn't have that, because it wouldn't be repulsive. It wouldn't be scary. It would take away half the movie. I mean, people maybe would not. I just when you're that good looking, as they usually make the vampires, everybody wants to be around them. They're attractive to them. They're wealthy. They have all this status. I loved Dark Shadows, and I have to give a shout out to Barnabas Collins and Fred. What's his name in real life? Fred. I, as a child, I was so obsessed with him. I don't know.
Ooh,
Dark Shadows. You never watched Dark Shadows?
I do, but who are we talking about in Dark Shadows?
Collins, the vampire.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember.
As a child,
I remember Dark Shadows barely, but yeah.
I was so obsessed with him as a child. He was just very charismatic, and he longed for love. He wanted love. So it kind of makes sense to me more now, because even though he wasn't repulsive, he just was like, he couldn't find love for whatever he wanted. Desired one woman. The woman that desired him was a witch. Everybody else was kind of like, you're just a wealthy, eccentric man. So it was kind of in between. I think it was the in between phase before they made the vampires good looking and wealthy, and all the women desired to be with them. This was the transition between Orlok and Barnabas, and then the vampires that we usually see today that are extremely good looking, and most women are around them, so he can feast many times a day. But yeah, his desire was to sexually own her or possess her and be with her. And it was he okay, so I should go back to this. He did bite Thomas Hutter, while they were visiting, while he's trying to arrange this sale of the decrepit home that's next to his own.
Before you go there, I just had a quick question. Did the realtor know that Olak, when he sent Thomas, that Olak was Dracula, a vampire? Okay.
I didn't know that. He did.
I know when I read
Well, he was
about it, they
already,
kind of knew, but I didn't know if
yeah,
he
he was
knew when
already
he
like
went
praying to him. He was already like, he knew exactly who he was. You're talking about Hurricane,
Is that his
the
boss?
one who went crazy later.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The one who went crazy later.
I probably slept through that, so I don't know.
Okay.
But
Yeah. So he knew all along. He was
yeah.
praying for Orlok to come. Don't you remember that?
No.
He was okay. You slept through it all then.
Yeah.
Yeah. You definitely go back and watch the movie. But yeah, he knew, because he was already praying to Orlok
Before the girl?
Well, I don't know before the girl, because I don't know
Okay.
when the girl was, but like as soon as we meet him in the movie, like he's soon after he's already praying to Orlok.
You don't remember he's in jail and fights?
Yeah, I was gonna say she don't remember he bit the head off the The pigeon. Okay, so yeah.
Yeah, he's I wasn't sure like that he knew and sent him with that intention, but I knew when he had lost his mind. I didn't know if Orlok did something to him that made him cry. I lost the yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get the impression that he knew that Orlok was interested in Ellen, but he was summoning Orlok just as Ellen had summoned Orlok previously. And he knew that Orlok was coming and he was there to be his servant. And he said those exact words, my master is coming.
Right.
And, I thought another amazing scene. I just love so much about this movie. Like I said, a couple things I didn't love, but I love so much about it. I loved, again, the makeup that when he came out of the casket and the rats just ran everywhere. And it was like, he is death. He is bringing the Black Plague. I just thought that was like so powerful, to see all those rats. For him to board the ship with caskets with rats in it, unleash it on the crew, have it show up on, on the docks, and then unleashing it on the city. You talk about, literally bringing the plague. That's pretty incredible. Me too. I was terrified. I was like, yeah, I'm moving out that day when the rats come.
It was definitely scarier than Ben. That's for sure. All those rats. I was like, oh my god, it was scary. It was definitely
and just the idea, and it makes sense when you think about when Brom made the movie and the reference to the Black Plague and everything like that. These were things that people were trying to understand, like why did the Black Plague take place? And again, you might make a myth around that somehow. It would might have made sense to them that the Black Plague wasn't just some random thing, but that there was some sort of evil purpose behind it. Yeah.
And I didn't understand the man in the fire circle either. I'm sure I probably missed all that as well, but they showed a guy that was in a circle of fire. This is like towards the beginning too. And I kept thinking, what is that all about?
Was that
you're talking about wasn't that was her Canuck, wasn't it? Wasn't that was the real estate agent?
That's when he was summoning him, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that was him. It didn't look like him. This guy it didn't look like him to me.
Had white hair. Well, who do you think the real estate agent was? Maybe we're talking about
the little guy, right?
Yeah, it was a little guy with white hair.
Yeah, well, the guy in the circle didn't look like him to me, but maybe it was him.
I thought it was him, but maybe
I thought it was him, but
it could have been, like I said.
It looked different when he went mad because he went mad. They had him in the sale asylum.
Yeah, he was the one that had that book with all of that, like I call it hieroglyphics. I know it's not hieroglyphics.
Yeah,
but all, that ancient language in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the same guy.
Okay. That makes sense then. Okay.
Yeah. Now, how he knew about him, I don't know. Maybe he found the book and started to pray to him. I don't know. Maybe he found a book and started to pray to him. I don't know if they got into that, but
yeah, it has a lot of. You really have to pay attention though, because there is a lot going on, and it is dark. Like I said, maybe I should have changed my settings because to see it, to view it on TV was not the same way for me. I'm like, what's happening right now? I felt like overall I needed it to be lighter for me to really grasp everything that was going on. I surely saw the rats, but certain things are happening when it had to be dim, and you have to really focus on what is happening in the scene.
Yeah, I think that's true because when Thomas first arrives at the castle and he's going up the curved staircase, and as he's turning the staircase, you can see, very faintly.
Yeah.
And I think to me that makes it more scary. If it's so bright that I know Orlok is standing there. Yeah. And then I loved that when he first meets Count Orlok, but first he sees him, he thinks, he's right around the corner, and then suddenly he's on the other side of the room. But the fire's behind him. So like you said, intentionally we can't see his face. And to me that's more impactful than if you can see his face. I mean, as much as I love the 1992 version, do you guys remember that version?
I'm gonna watch it when we get off this. I'm like, I don't remember this.
Really? Oh, it was so good. It was well, but plus it was Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder. Come on. Of course
That's
it was
why
good.
I'm like, I have to watch it.
But it was uh it was much, it was not dark and darkly lit, but the Count Dracula had like that big puffy kind of like blonde do that they would wear that was kind of like looked like a little pumpkin on his head,
Mhm.
the big forehead, and he was
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
floating around and everything. So you kind of knew what he looked like instantly. And so they had to make other things scary. But this keeping him in the dark kept making me think, is he going to shapeshift? But this was not a shape-shifting vampire like other vampires. He didn't turn in, this isn't a one that turns into a bat. He is
Right,
just in his body the whole time.
right.
And so I liked that when you finally did see him, because that he looked like he was decaying. He looked
Yep,
like he had been
yep,
buried in the earth for hundreds of years.
yep.
And I thought that to me would be far more scary than
Yeah,
if you saw somebody who looked like they had been dead for a very long time, you know,
he was definitely.
and super tall. That didn't help, right? He was also like, it looked like he was like 7 feet tall.
Even the way he talked, I mean, he was like, "You shall." Oh,
Yeah.
like he had dirt in his throat for like 100 years. His everything he said terrified me, and you could see Thomas was clearly like he wanted to get out of there. He wanted to sign his papers. He wanted to go. He didn't want to eat. He didn't want to. He didn't want to drink. He wanted to sign the papers, and of course, he's a newlywed. He wants to get home, but he was terrified in that room, and I was terrified with him. I mean, you could see the sweat beads coming, and it wasn't the fire. He was scared to death, and he did an excellent job when he first entered that room and heard that voice. And he gets mad, like, you shall call me Lord, like you're gonna address me a certain way. And he's like trembling, and I'm like, this is really.
I would have been trembling too. What did you make of Count Orlok saying, "I am an appetite"? What did he mean by that? Did anybody have any thoughts about it? No. Whaley's like, did he say that? I wasn't. I must
No,
have
I
slept.
do remember him saying that, but I'm trying to think why, because I probably had the same question at the time.
Yeah, I feel like maybe because people summon him, like he's being summoned. Is that what he means? Like people,
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. I just thought it was, I mean, he was very, he spoke slowly the entire time,
Right.
but that line he said so emphatically that I thought, is there some meaning to this? And of course, probably gonna look it up later, but I wasn't sure if anybody else made anything of that.
He did an excellent job at
Yeah.
that.
What about the gypsy scene? I thought that was pretty cool. Cool. I really
Oh
liked it
yeah.
on his journey to the castle where he met these gypsies and then he had a dream about killing someone and then he woke up and they're all gone. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
They made it. I'm sorry.
I just wasn't sure what that was like supposed to. Was it supposed to mean something? I don't know. I feel like
He
sometimes.
was warning, they were warning him, right? So they were,
Thank you.
right? 'Cause remember they had like the crosses on the road, they had the garlic, and I mean they were warning him, you don't want to go up towards that castle, this man represents death. And of course, you know how we are, like, these old backwoods people from the village, they don't know what they're talking about. And in fact, even came up later when wasn't it Willem Dafoe that was making the argument between whether it was actually a curse or whether it was something, psychological. And he was making the point that, the modern cities dismiss all of those things. And so I thought that the point of the village was, these people knew what they were talking about. Like they knew, they had in their minds, they had seen or heard or whatever, all these things, and they were warning him, and he was just very dismissive of them.
He was dismissive of everybody. The Indian,
Yeah, and he regretted
he had to
that.
pay twice as much to stay there because they didn't want him to stay there when they knew he was going to visit. I'm like, he had all kinds of signs and he was still going. I mean,
And the castle alone was so scary.
yeah.
And absolutely just the way they made that Romanian countryside look or wherever they were supposed to be. I don't know. So was this one? I know the city was supposed to be in Germany. Was the countryside supposed to be Germany too? I don't know
I
where it
think
was
so.
supposed to be. Was it?
I think so.
Okay.
We said
Okay.
somewhere in the Alps. He said Alps. He used the term Alps, but I'm not sure which Alps he's talking about at that time. But he
Well,
mentioned
the
something
Alps do
about,
go through a bunch of different countries, so it's
yeah,
possible they were
so
talking about, I don't know. But it was absolutely gorgeous. But it looked so black. It almost looked like the whole countryside was covered with
doom
soot.
and gloom.
Yeah, and that alone was, would make me hesitate. You know, I'm a scary person anyway, so I'm not going up there. But
Yeah, I wouldn't take that job.
yeah, I wouldn't. But I can see why he did, because
Of
you know
course.
he
He was
wanted to start a family with his
exactly.
wife, and even though
Exactly.
she warned him too, Ellen warned him.
She did
He
tell him
said,
to do
"Don't
the
do
thing.
it."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
To go. But
Yep.
you know, we understood why he went. He needed the money. His boss is sending him. I mean, you know, not too many people are going to tell their boss, "No, I can't do it."
And Ellen was getting a little bit too comfortable living with his rich friend, starting to think that might have been her lifestyle. What did you make of um the count when he finally shows up, just killing everybody, including the kids?
Yeah, he was ruthless. Yeah.
I'm gonna
Um,
laugh at that because that's not funny at all. But because the kids were like, the whole time the kids were like, "Mommy is this gonna, who's this?" They were questioning and hearing things and nervous and, "Mommy, there's a man in my room," and the parents again dismissive, not paying attention. Then all of a sudden he just picked those kids up and was like dead, dead, dead. It's like, oh
Yeah.
snap.
Yeah.
I feel like you know, that if there were kids in the movie, they had to go because you could tell, did not care about anybody. He was undead and he didn't care. He was ruthless. He was heartless. I mean, he was going to do what he was going to do. And I applaud, what was her, Ellen in the movie when she, you know, does realize what it's going to take that she would do that. Cause I'm like,
Sacrifice
I,
herself, yeah.
I think it kind of goes back to what Nunya said. Like, why? Why do you need to sacrifice? Why do you need to kill the children? Like, or any of those people? Like, what is the purpose? What's the end goal here?
yeah, I feel
Well,
like,
I that part I made that part. Well, I think I understood the end goal once I kind of went back and heard, read about like that's what his motivation is, right?
yeah,
Um, but anything that stood in its way, my guess is he was going to kill.
anything
Like if
that,
they were not in his way, it wasn't like he was going out of his way to kill people. But if they were in his path, they were dying.
yeah. I mean, he's got no empathy or sympathy. It's just kid, adult, dog. Like nothing would have mattered to him except for getting to Ellen. Like he had,
Yeah, yeah. And I did like the scene at the end where she basically killed him, trapped him so that he died, and I thought that was clever.
very clever,
And
very clever, very brave,
very
and
brave.
yeah, very brave. And
I mean, she pretty much summoned him, so she pretty much, I mean, it makes sense
Well,
that
she had
he would
summoned
be the
him
one.
previously,
yeah,
She had summoned him. That's why he was
but
there, right?
previously, like not in that era, right? Right. She had purposed him previously when she was younger.
right. And ever
In
since
the very beginning of the movie, she didn't look too young to me. That's when she had the dream and she was summoning him.
Right. But there was a period that was pre Thomas, pre marriage, pre everything.
yeah,
Right,
That's what,
right,
right. So I'm saying there was
right,
a window. So she summoned him originally, but obviously she started changing her mind when the dreams and everything started coming back. That's why she told Thomas not to go. She said, "I don't have a good
right,
feeling about it."
right,
So
right.
this was the way that in Sunchild described it, right? How many years did you say was between the two?
38.
That couldn't be.
38. That
That,
can't be
that,
right.
yeah, I think that's what it says.
There's no way that girl wasn't even 38 at the end of the movie.
I,
Right.
but I thought
She
that's
was
what.
definitely in her probably early 30s when she summoned him in the beginning. So
No, no. I
yeah,
don't even know if the actress is in her early 30s.
Oh,
I
maybe
think she's not portraying a woman in her late
yeah,
30s getting
yeah.
married for the first time. Hmm?
I thought she was supposed to be like early 20s, but is that what it says?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it just says in 1838.
well, that's when yeah, that's when in Germany, 1838 is when the film or when it started. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it ever does say the exact like years or age, but I guess
They do
when
make
she
it
was
clear it's pre all of that. So yeah,
right,
she
yeah,
summoned him because she was young and she was lonely, right? That was what the whole point is, that she was like lonely. But once she got a husband and everything, she didn't. So it's not like, oh, if you do, if it's like me, calling out to a Mary, to a mirror, Mary, 30 years later, I don't expect that shit to come back and haunt me. Well, you summoned him back in 1974. I think she thought that was behind her. She was young, stupid, didn't think anything of it. I don't think. But when she summoned him and heard the voice back, then she was like, okay, well, this stuff is real. But then she put that all behind her and she was telling her husband not to go. I don't think so. Yeah, she summoned him originally, but she was clearly not summoning him at the time that he came. Maybe I
I
should say
also
it that
don't think
way.
she was trying to summon something evil. Obviously, that wasn't her
No,
intention. Yeah.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, we can't be holding that on her.
Yeah, I think she was summoning companionship because she was lonely. Maybe she was, I don't know, willing something. She just had no idea that it was going to be, the undead Orlok. And I think he just bided his time to find a way in, and Thomas was his way in. I
Well,
mean,
I think it kind of goes back to what Nunya said. It's probably because he was looking for someone who's just about to get married. And the assumption, right? So, I mean, that seems to kind of be the enticement a little bit.
Or that seems to be, at least that was a historical precedent for all these myths, or at least that was not historical precedent, but that was the myths historically. But well, if you remember though, it was when Thomas gets to the castle, Orlok sees his, what is that little, his little
yeah,
picture on his little chain.
right.
And so he says, and then he says,
Yes.
oh, so now he has, okay, I want that. And so that's why I think, because I don't know, I
I think
didn't,
he recognized her.
yes. And
Yes.
now, but now he had a connection. Now he
Right.
had a
Right.
way. Now he had a,
Right.
because, well, then, but then if you think, but then was it a coincidence then that he was buying the house right across from them? I guess it was. I don't know.
I didn't realize it was right across from them. I thought it was a little further out, but I don't
I
think it
mean,
was a coincidence because, well,
I,
maybe he knew that's where she lived. I don't know. Well,
but when
then,
he saw the picture, he didn't, it wasn't like it didn't seem like he recognized her as, oh,
but
that's my love.
I feel
oh,
like
I
he's
thought he
always
did. I thought,
heard her, but he's never seen her. I feel like
Maybe that's what I was
yeah,
thinking.
I feel like he's heard her and he knows this connection. And the boss sent him there because the boss knew. So the boss is helping him with this connection to bring him there. But when he visually sees her and now he has the face and the voice, now his desire becomes stronger to be there and possess her. So I think it was intentional to get that.
And
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think it
well,
was. Sorry.
I'll go.
I'm
So
done.
there was a scene where Thomas wakes up from a dream and he looks in a mirror. It looked like there was no reflection. Was there a reflection? I'm not sure what he was looking at. But there was one scene where he wakes up and holds a mirror up, and I didn't see a reflection. And I thought, oh, maybe he's a vampire now or something like that. But when I looked at
I
some of
don't
the other
remember.
videos, it looked like there was a reflection. So I'm not really sure, but I thought there was no reflection in the mirror.
The reflection of Thomas or a reflection of the Count?
Thomas,
Oh, I don't
he was
remember.
by himself and he woke up and he looked in the mirror. I guess
I
yeah,
think he
might have been
didn't
right
see
after
it,
he
but
got
was
bitten.
that a dream? Was he dreaming that?
I think he woke up from the dream and then he picked up the mirror for some reason.
Oh.
And I was trying to think, but there was no reflection? Is he now a vampire? But if
He
that's
was
not,
reading those books, right? And then he got bit, which he was brushing off as like mosquito bites, but the count had bit him. So I
right.
think his like subconscious, he was thinking he's a vampire. He's not seeing himself, but we know that that's not
Yeah.
what's happening with Orlok.
What I was going to say is, if you remember, in terms of the connection with Ellen, if you remember when he arrived, he said to Ellen, "You're just like me. You're like me. You're one of me. You're one of my kind," type of thing.
Right.
So I don't know if that meant, if he said that because she really was somehow slightly different, or because she had called out to him and only people who are like him could he hear. I don't know, but there was definitely some connection. I just wanted to throw that little point in there about him making the point that she was like him.
Mm.
Anything else that anybody wants to
I mean, I think it's definitely worth watching. They just think that you have to pay attention. You can't be like distracted because there are a lot of little things that happen. And because it is older, 1800 times, I don't think you have to pay attention. You just have to be focused when you're watching it. Otherwise, you miss little nuances that you might otherwise, not know if you're just listening to it, you're not watching it.
Right. Hmm. All right. Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about, or do we want to rate it? Or
Ready to read it?
Yeah, right.
okay. Sunshine, you want to go first?
I'm going to give it a 4. I really liked it. I think the only thing keeping me from giving it a 5, it was just a little, maybe even like a 4.5. I don't know. I'm torn between 4 and 4.5. It was just a little too long for me. Me, even though it's not typical horror, and I understand it's more of a, it's a lot of, it could be considered a love story. I mean, this Orlok wants to possess her. He's driven by her. He doesn't just want someone's blood. He doesn't just want to bite someone like a lot of vampires do, even though they do desire a connection with one person. They have many connections in movies that I've seen. His longing for her. So it's kind of like a dark love story, a thriller, a horror, a drama. It's got a lot of things wrapped up into it. The acting, superb acting. The cinematography was also excellent. I just, maybe if it was a little shorter, it would be a 5. But I'm gonna do 4.5. Just like the acting alone is worth watching it. There has to be like an Emmy or a Grammy or something for somebody in that movie, because it was that good.
Okay, I'll go next. Um, it definitely wasn't my kind of movie. I'm not really a vampire movie. Like I said, I loved the book. And the movie was good. It just wasn't my kind of movie. So I'm going to give it, I mean, the cinematography was really good. Um, I mean, I guess I'll give it a 3. I'll give it a 3.
Right. I'm like Sunchild. I'm kind of torn. I was gonna initially give it a 4, but I feel and I was only gonna give it a 4 because I was gonna take off a half point for the fact that um even though the original one wasn't scary, I kind of missed the 1992 version, which was scary. There were some elements in that that I wish could have been brought into this one. But um, to me, this was just, like I said, just an absolutely beautiful film. Between the acting, the set design, the costumes, the makeup, everything to me was just so well done. It was just absolutely brilliant in that respect. And so for me, just as a film, it's an automatic 4. And so I don't know, 4.5. I'm gonna give it. What did you end up giving it, Sunchild? I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 4.5 because it really was a beautiful movie.
It was. It definitely was.
Yeah, beautiful, not in the sense that lovely,
Right.
beautiful, but just absolutely
Just
beautiful to
done
watch.
masterfully. It was just
So well done, so well done. And I tend to like Robert Eggers. I'm probably the only person in this group that loved The Witch, but The Witch is also one of my favorite horror movies. And it's not a in your face, you're going to be scared. There's no jump scares, nothing like that. But you talk about creepy. It's another. Did you either any of you see The
I
Witch?
have not,
I
but
feel like I may have. What is it about?
It's another one set in, I don't know, the 18th century,
Mm,
on a farm somewhere in England.
mm.
And it's about uh, weird things happening in a village and a family believing that one of their children is possessed.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But it's not a possession type movie or anything like that. It's just one of those very, what I love about movies set in these times is that it makes sense to me, as we've talked many times. If you can't scientifically explain something, you'll start to create some story behind what's
Yeah,
happening.
yeah,
And it makes sense that back in those days, they couldn't figure out what was happening. Then those stories you tell your children to keep them from going into the woods or
right,
whatever.
right,
And it was one of those where you couldn't quite tell. Is the girl just got a regular, would she just be considered bipolar today, or is
right,
something more happening?
right.
And so it's just subtle, and but it's, I don't think it's a movie we would want to review here, because I don't think either of you would care for it, but it's a beautiful movie. And one of the most beautiful things about the movie is, I'm just going to tell you as a spoiler alert. um you know how goats, back then everybody thought goats were the devil because they had feet.
Yes.
Well, the whoever did the voice acting of a goat who does talk in the movie, talk about haunted. that shit had me like, if I see a goat, a black goat, I'm kicking that shit. Like I was like, it was like just in case. It was so just it was like that. And I love Robert Eggers. I think he's done a bunch of other movies, but I think he's brilliant. And he did a great job on this. And again, kudos to Lily Depp, Nicholas Holt, um, Willem Dafoe, Bill Skarsgård, just amazing.
Amazing. He's definitely got a different take. He's not like anyone else. When you see a movie by him, you know it's by him. And I love that because it's unique.
I love that he takes his time. Like I love that he's trying to make art. He's just not trying to make a movie. He's trying to make art. He's trying to really be thoughtful. It's like the difference between like reading some, romance novel for $4.99 versus reading an actually amazing author. And to me, he's elevating filmmaking. And that doesn't always go hand in hand with scary, but he does a great job at that.
Right. All right, ladies. Well, that's it, guys. This is Girls Talk 9.0. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. My name is Wheelie Hollow. That's Nanya. And over there is Sunchild. Thank you, guys.